disturbing. Tonight, we are plunging into the dark heart of the Appalachian Mountains with some truly unsettling true horror stories that will keep you up all night, if you're brave enough. Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next descent into fear. Now, get comfortable. Relax. I was 22 when I first heard about Raven's Gap Trail, a senior at Appalachian State University. My girlfriend Emma had found references to it in old hiking guides, a forgotten branch off the main Appalachian Trail. Supposedly it led to scenic overlooks. Remote waterfalls hidden from tourists. The trail wasn't on modern maps. Emma discovered it in a 1960s guidebook. Faded pages showed rough sketches, hand-drawn markers leading into deep wilderness. Adventure, she called it. I should have known better. We drove to the trailhead on a gray October morning. The parking area was barely visible, overgrown with kudzu and briars. A rusted sign warned hikers away. Trail closed, hazardous conditions. Emma laughed and stepped over the chain. The gas station attendant had been less cheerful, an old man with worried eyes. "Y'all ain't thinking of hiking Raven's Gap," he said. Not a question, a statement of dread. "That trail ain't right, never has been." He told us stories, hikers going missing, rescue teams finding empty camps. "Don't answer if something calls. Your name," he warned, "even if it sounds like someone you know, especially then." Emma dismissed his warnings as local superstition, small-town fear of outsiders. But his words followed us into the forest, echoed in my mind with each step. The trail started normally enough, well-worn path through mixed hardwoods. But something felt wrong from the beginning. Sound seemed muffled. Here, our footsteps too quiet. Words died quickly in the thick air. Within an hour, the markers stopped matching our guidebook. Blazes appeared on wrong trees, trail splits that shouldn't exist. Emma checked her compass repeatedly. The needle spun without settling. We camped beside a creek that night. Clear water over smooth stones. The sound should have been peaceful. Instead, it masked other noises. Rustling that wasn't wind, footsteps that weren't ours. While gathering firewood, I found the first symbols, carved deep into an old oak, spirals and lines forming patterns. They hurt to look at directly, made my eyes water and ache. Emma discovered the stone piles at dusk, 7 rocks stacked carefully, too balanced to be natural. She knocked one over. The stones rolled downhill with hollow sounds, like bones hitting earth. That first night we heard the howling. Not quite wolf, not quite human. It came from multiple directions, sometimes close, sometimes distant, always wrong. Sleep came fitfully. I dreamed of voices calling my name. Emma's voice, my mother's voice, all coming from the dark forest, all slightly off, like recordings played at wrong speeds. Morning brought no relief. The forest felt heavier somehow, pressing down with invisible weight. Trees seemed closer together. Paths we'd walked yesterday had vanished. New symbols appeared overnight, carved into bark around our campsite, fresh cuts oozing sap. The spirals were larger now, more complex. They seemed to writhe when I wasn't looking directly. Emma found her backpack moved, placed carefully against a tree. She swore she'd left it beside the tent. Her water bottles were arranged in a perfect line, caps facing the same direction. We tried to retrace our steps, find the main trail, but nothing looked familiar. The creek flowed uphill in places. Compass spun wildly. GPS showed only static. That's when we first heard our own voices, faint calls from deeper in the forest. "Emma," in my exact tone. "David," in hers. Perfect mimicry that made our skin crawl. Emma saw it first. A shadow between distant trees, tall and impossibly thin, moving wrong, joints bending backward. She grabbed my arm and pointed, but when I looked, only empty forest stared back. We huddled together as afternoon faded. The voices grew stronger, more insistent. My own voice calling Emma's name, her voice answering from opposite directions, conversations we'd never had. I found the footprints around midnight, long and narrow, pressed deep into soft earth. They circled our tent completely. Some showed hoof-like impressions. Others resembled human feet. All wrong. Trees began falling without wind. Massive oaks crashing down. Always behind us, never where we could see. The sound echoed strangely, multiplied, and distorted. Emma started sleepwalking on the second night. I woke to find her gone. Tent flaps opened to cold air. I found her standing at the forest's edge, staring into absolute darkness. "It called my name," she whispered. "Sounded just like you." Her eyes reflected starlight, empty and distant. "It wants us to follow." The false trails multiplied, paths leading in tight circles, back to the same marked trees, the same carved symbols. We were walking in loops, trapped in some vast maze. Our food supplies dwindled faster than possible. Water bottles emptied overnight. Equipment disappeared and reappeared, always slightly wrong. Zippers on different sides. Colors subtly changed. The third night brought the creature close. So close we could hear its breathing. Wet, labored sounds just outside our tent. Footsteps circling endlessly, never pausing, never stopping. "Emma," it called in my voice. Perfect pitch and tone. "Come outside." I found the way out. But I was lying beside her, had never left the tent. Emma reached for the zipper. Her eyes, unfocused, dreamy. "That's you," she whispered. "You're calling me." I grabbed her wrist, felt how cold her skin had become. Then I saw it through the tent's mesh window, standing just beyond the firelight, tall as a tree, thin as shadow. Arms, too long, legs bent wrong. Its face was a blur of features, constantly shifting, sometimes mine, sometimes Emma's. It spoke with both our voices simultaneously, a horrible harmony of familiar sounds. "Come out, come follow, come home." The words overlapped and echoed, created new meanings in the repetition. We ran at dawn, left everything behind, crashed through undergrowth like panicked animals. The forest fought us. Branches grabbed at clothing, roots caught our feet. Path collapsed behind us. The creature followed without sound, a shadow between trees, always at the edge of vision, getting closer with each stumble, each backward glance. Then suddenly we were free, standing beside our car, chest deep in normal forest. Sunlight filtered through ordinary leaves. The oppressive weight lifted from our shoulders, but something was wrong. My watch showed Tuesday. We'd entered on Saturday. 3 days had passed. Felt like weeks. My phone was completely dead. Battery corroded green. Strange symbols covered our car, scratched into paint and glass. The same spirals from the forest. Key still in ignition. Doors unlocked, as if we'd just arrived. The drive home passed in. Silence. Neither of us spoke about what happened, what we'd seen and heard. Some experiences resist description, demand secrecy. Back at school, normal life resumed. Classes and assignments, papers about literature and history. But the forest followed us, echoed in quiet moments. My voicemail contained a message, my own voice speaking words I'd never said. "I'm still here, still waiting. Come back soon." The timestamp showed it was recorded while we were driving home. Emma began talking in her sleep, conversations with someone unseen, always about returning, about unfinished business, about something that called her name. The gas station attendant wasn't surprised. "You heard your own voices," he said. "Statement of fact. That means it knows you now, has your sound, your shape." His eyes held ancient worry. Them that hear themselves called ain't never truly free. Even now, months later, I hear it sometimes. My voice calling from empty rooms, from dark forests glimpsed through windows. Always the same invitation, always the same promise. Emma hears it too. She started hiking alone, exploring trails closer to our old route. Each weekend she ventures deeper, gets home later, returns with that distant look. "It's calling," she tells me. getting clearer every time. Her voice sounds wrong now, slightly off pitch, like an imperfect recording. I know she'll go back eventually, answer that perfect mimicry, follow her own voice into the waiting dark, and I know it's calling me too. I had hiked this section before, Weeping Hollow Trail in Northern Virginia, a remote stretch connecting to the main Appalachian Trail. My hiking partner Sarah and I planned a simple overnight trip, nothing ambitious, just two experienced hikers, seeking solitude. The weather forecast showed clear skies, perfect autumn conditions for backpacking. But weather changes quickly in these mountains. Always has, always will. We started at dawn from the Maple Ridge parking area. The trail wound through old-growth forest, massive oaks and towering pines. Sunlight filtered through golden leaves. Everything felt normal at first. 3 miles in, the fog began forming. Wisps at first, clinging to distant ridges, then thicker patches drifting between trees. Within an hour, visibility dropped to 20 feet. "This came out of nowhere," Sarah said. Her voice sounded muffled, distant even though she walked beside me. The fog swallowed sound differently here, made everything feel underwater. My GPS showed our location clearly, but the trail markers stopped matching. White blazes appeared on wrong trees, blue blazes where none should exist. I'd hiked this path twice before, never seen these marks. Sarah found the first symbols carved into a beech tree. Stick figures holding hands. Crude but deliberate. Fresh cuts still seeping sap. "Kids, maybe," she suggested, but we were miles from any road. The fog continued thickening throughout the morning. Soon we could barely see each other. I called out constantly, "Sarah, you there?" Her responses came from strange directions. Sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, never where expected. My compass needle spun without settling. True north seemed to shift with each reading. Sarah's phone showed no signal. GPS coordinates flickered and changed. Technology failed in the growing mist. That's when we heard the footsteps, light and quick, following our path but offset, like children running through leaves. But when we stopped, the sounds continued, always just out of sight. Faint laughter drifted through the fog, high-pitched and playful, but wrong somehow. Too old for the voices, too knowing for innocent play. The sound made my skin crawl. I glimpsed them first around noon, small figures in the distance, moving between trees like pale shadows, child-sized, but wrong proportions. Arms too long, heads too large. When I pointed them out, they vanished. "Just fog playing tricks," Sarah said. But her voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. We'd both seen something moving out there, something that shouldn't exist. We tried following our GPS track backward, retracing morning steps to find clear trail, but the path had changed. Familiar landmarks were gone. New ones appeared where none existed before. The fog seemed alive now, reaching with tendrils, obscuring crucial markers, leading us in subtle circles. We were experienced hikers. We knew these signs, but knowledge didn't help here. By afternoon, panic set in. We'd been walking for hours, made no progress toward recognizable terrain. The fog held us like a living thing, refused to release its grip. That's when we realized the truth. We weren't lost in normal weather. Something had trapped us here. Something that watched from the mist. Something that laughed like children but moved like predators. We made camp early, found a small clearing barely visible through the fog. Set up our tent by feel more than sight. Everything took twice as long. The mist confused our hands as much as our eyes. Sarah discovered the photographs while organizing her pack. Polaroid pictures scattered in her sleeping bag. Images of us hiking that morning, but the angles were impossible. Shots from above, from positions no human could reach. One photo showed us setting up camp, but we hadn't taken pictures yet. The timestamp read 3 days in the future. Sarah stared at the image with growing horror. "This isn't possible," she whispered. I found scratches in my backpack fabric, symbols carved deep into waterproof material. The same stick figures from the tree, but more complex now, holding hands in larger circles, dancing around spiral patterns. The fog never lifted. Even at sunset, visibility remained terrible. We ate dinner by headlamp, spoke in whispers. Every sound seemed amplified. Every silence stretched too long. Sarah heard them first. Children's voices singing somewhere in the mist. A lullaby I almost recognized. Old words in languages I couldn't place. The melody was beautiful and terrifying. There. She pointed into the gray wall surrounding us. Do you see them? I did. Pale figures moving in coordinated patterns, dancing. The same spirals carved into our gear. Their movements seemed rehearsed, ancient, like ritual performances repeated countless times. More photographs appeared throughout the night, slipped under our tent flaps. Images of us sleeping, eating, packing gear, all from impossible perspectives, all dated incorrectly. Some showed future events, others past moments we couldn't remember experiencing. A tall figure watched from the forest edge, hooded and motionless, not quite human proportions. It never moved closer, never retreated, just observed our growing panic with patient interest. Sarah became fixated on the singing, hummed along unconsciously. Her eyes grew distant, unfocused. When I spoke her name, she didn't always respond. Something was drawing her attention elsewhere. We tried hiking out after midnight. Desperation overcame caution, but the trail led in impossible loops. We passed our campsite 3 times, always from different directions. The fog had made geography meaningless. Dawn brought no relief. No sunrise penetrated the gray wall. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing without reason. My watch showed conflicting hours. Sarah's showed different days entirely. We found the lean-to around noon, ancient shelter built from local stone, covered in the same spiral symbols. Inside, more photographs waited, images of previous hikers. Dozens of faces we didn't recognize. All looked terrified, all dated years apart. A carved wooden figure sat on the shelter's table, childlike but wrong. Too many fingers, eyes that seemed to follow movement. When Sarah touched it, the singing grew louder, more insistent. By evening, exhaustion overwhelmed us. Gear was failing. Batteries drained impossibly fast. Water tasted wrong. Food had no flavor. The fog was slowly draining everything normal. From our experience, the children appeared closer now, close enough to see their faces, pale and ageless, neither young nor old. They beckoned with elongated fingers, smiled with too many teeth, invited us to join their eternal dance. Sarah disappeared during the second night. I woke to find her sleeping bag empty. No sign of struggle, no footprints in the soft earth. She had simply vanished into the waiting fog. I called her name for hours, received only echoes and distant laughter. The children's voices mimicked my shouts, perfect imitations that mocked my growing desperation. They had taken her somehow. Then I heard her singing, the same lullaby from before, but her voice sounded changed, older, hollow, like sound traveling through vast distances. She was still out there, but not the same person. Panic drove me deeper into the forest, running blindly through trees I couldn't see. Branches tore at, clothes and skin. Roots caught my feet, but anything was better than standing still. The fog began thinning near dawn, wisps instead of walls. I could see farther than 20 feet for the first time in days. Hope flickered despite everything lost. A gravel service road appeared through the mist, real asphalt and painted lines. Normal human construction. I followed it desperately, ignoring voices calling from behind, ignoring Sarah's song growing fainter. The ranger station sat empty but unlocked. I used their phone to call for help, but explanations sounded insane even to me. Missing hiker, supernatural fog, children who weren't children. The ranger promised to investigate. My phone showed the wrong date. A full week had passed, but I remembered only 3 days. Time had been stolen along with everything else. Sarah's disappearance made no sense to authorities. The search team found our campsite easily. No fog remained. No symbols on trees. No carved figures or impossible photographs. Just normal forest where normal things happened. They questioned my story, suggested dehydration, altitude sickness, reasonable explanations for unreasonable events. But I kept one photograph, hidden in my jacket pocket. Image of Sarah dancing with pale children, her eyes empty, her smile too wide. The timestamp showed yesterday's date, proof of something beyond explanation. Weeks passed. The investigation concluded. Sarah was officially missing, presumed dead. I returned to normal life, job and responsibilities, but normal felt fragile now, temporary. Sometimes I hear the singing, late at night when wind moves through trees. Sarah's voice mixed with others, all performing that ancient lullaby, all calling me to return. A carved wooden figure appeared in my apartment. Same style as the shelter, same wrong proportions. Never brought it home, never saw it arrive. But there it sits, watching with painted eyes. My dreams show Weeping Hollow constantly, the fog rolling between familiar trees, children dancing in eternal spirals. Sarah among them now, part of something older than human memory. The ranger calls occasionally, updates on the case, but his voice sounds different, hollow, like Sarah's singing, like sound traveling impossible distances. I think the fog has claimed him too. They're still out there, waiting in the mist, dancing their ancient patterns, collecting lost hikers for purposes beyond understanding. Sarah found what she was looking for, or it found her. Even now, months later, I smell wood smoke some evenings, hear children laughing in empty rooms, feel watched by unseen eyes. The fog may have released me, but it hasn't forgotten. Some nights I pack my hiking gear, plan returns to Weeping Hollow. The singing grows stronger then, more beautiful, more compelling. Sarah's voice promising reunion, promising understanding. But morning always comes. Sunlight burns away the urges, reveals them as dangerous temptations. I remain in the normal world, for now. The children are patient. They have eternity. Eventually, all hikers return to the Bois Trail. All lost souls find their way home. They'll be waiting when I do. I'm a nature photographer. Been doing it for 12 years now. The Appalachians are my specialty. Wild places where few people venture. Hellbender Ridge was perfect for my project. Remote section in southwestern Virginia. Old growth forest untouched by logging. The kind of wilderness that feels ancient. I drove up the fire road in late September. Leaves just starting to turn. The air crisp with autumn promise. My plan was simple. 3 days camping. Document the changing season. At the ranger station I met Tom Whitaker, grizzled man in his 60s, been working these mountains for 30 years. Hellbender Ridge, eh? He looked up from his paperwork. Don't get many folks heading up there. I signed the backcountry permit. Asked about trail conditions. Trails are fine, he said slowly. Just mind the old stories. I laughed. Every mountain has its legends. No joke, son. His expression grew serious. Back in 1952, lightning struck the old logging camp. 3 men burned alive, couldn't get out in time. He paused, studied my face. Sometimes hikers report strange things. Smoke where there shouldn't be smoke. Heat when the air should be cool. I thanked him and headed up the mountain. The trail wound through dense forest. Massive oaks and hickories formed a green cathedral overhead. By evening, I reached my planned campsite. A small clearing beside Hellbender Creek. The water ran clear and cold over smooth stones. I set up my tent, prepared my camera gear. The light was perfect for sunset shots. That's when I first smelled it. Wood smoke, sweet and thick, like a campfire nearby. I searched the area. No other campers, no fire rings. The smell came from nowhere. As darkness fell, something else appeared. Ash, gray flakes drifting down through still air. landing on my tent, on my equipment. There were no fires anywhere, no storms. The ash fell anyway. I examined it closely, fine powder, soft as snow. It smelled of burning wood, and something else, something organic. Then I saw the marks. On the oak tree beside my tent, long burns scored into the bark, like giant fingers had clawed the wood. The marks glowed faintly in my flashlight beam. More burns on nearby rocks. Perfect handprints seared into stone. The granite was actually melted, formed glass-smooth depressions. I checked my thermometer. 75 degrees. Normal for September evening. But the air around those burns felt different. Warmer. Like standing near a dying fire. I tried to photograph the marks. My camera wouldn't focus properly. The lens kept hunting, searching for something that wasn't there. Back at my tent, I felt eyes watching. From the dark forest beyond my small circle of light. Patient, waiting. The smell of smoke grew stronger. More ash fell from the starless sky. I zipped my tent closed. Lay in my sleeping bag listening. The creek bubbled peacefully. Normal night. Sounds of the forest. Owls calling. Wind in leaves. But underneath it all, another sound. Faint crackling, like wood burning very slowly. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams. I dreamed of fire consuming everything, of men screaming in burning buildings. When I woke, ash covered my tent, thick as morning snow. Dawn brought no relief from the strangeness. My camera equipment was covered in ash. My water bottles warm to the touch. I checked my thermometer again. 82 degrees at sunrise. That couldn't be right. The forest around me looked different. Leaves on nearby trees had brown edges, like they'd been singed. The grass near my tent was yellowed, dying. Something had changed during the night. The very air felt charged, heavy with heat that had no source. I packed quickly, decided to move to a different campsite. But as I shouldered my pack, I saw them. Footprints in the soft earth, human-shaped but wrong. Each print glowed faintly orange, like coals pressed into dirt. The prints led away from my camp, toward the old logging road. I followed them with growing unease. They were perfectly spaced, adult human stride, but they smoldered. Tiny wisps of smoke rose from each depression. The trail of prints ended at a burned tree. Lightning struck years ago. The trunk was hollow, charcoal black inside. From within came the crackling sound, louder now. Definitely the sound of burning wood. I raised my camera, tried to photograph the hollow tree. The viewfinder showed only bright light, blazing white that hurt my eyes. Then my camera died. Battery, fully charged that morning, now completely dead. I checked my phone, also dead. My GPS unit wouldn't turn on. Even my wristwatch had stopped. The temperature climbed steadily. 90 degrees, 95. My clothes were soaked with sweat. Evening brought no cooling. If anything, the heat intensified. The air shimmered like summer pavement. That's when I saw him clearly. He stood at the edge of my vision. Tall figure made of shadow and flame. His outline flickered, wavered like heat distortion. Where his eyes should be, 2 points of orange light, burning coals in a face of darkness. He moved closer. Each step left a glowing footprint. The grass beneath him withered instantly. My compass spun wildly. The needle couldn't find north. The forest around me began to change. Trees I'd passed earlier were gone. New ones had taken their place. The trail I'd followed vanished. In every direction, unmarked wilderness. The burning man raised one arm, pointed toward the old logging road. His finger was a tongue of flame. I ran, through brush that tore at my clothes, over fallen logs slick with ash. Behind me, I heard his footsteps, slow, steady, each one crackling like paper in fire. The heat followed me, grew stronger with each step. My lungs burned with each breath. I found an old building, ranger's cabin from decades past. Roof partially collapsed, walls still standing. Inside, I barricaded the door, sat in the corner trying to calm my racing heart. through broken windows, I saw him approaching. The burning man walked through the forest. Trees around him began to smolder. Leaves curled black and fell like rain. He stopped at the cabin door, pressed his palm against the wood. Smoke began to rise. The door grew hot. Paint blistered and peeled. The metal hinges glowed red. But he didn't enter. Just stood there, waiting. I could feel his presence. Heat radiating through the walls. The very air becoming unbreathable. Hours passed. The burning man remained, patient as stone, hot as flame. Dawn finally came. The heat lessened slightly. When I looked outside, he was gone. Only his footprints remained, burned into the earth around the cabin. I waited until full daylight, then crept from the cabin. The forest looked normal again, green and cool, but my compass still spun uselessly. My dead electronics wouldn't revive. I was lost without instruments. I chose a direction, started walking. The sun would guide me east, toward civilization. Hours of hiking through unmarked forest. No trails, no landmarks I recognized. Just endless trees in every direction. Then I began seeing them again. Heat, distortions ahead, shimmering air where no heat should be. Every path I tried led back to the same burned clearing, the same hollow tree. I walked in circles. The burning man was hurting me, controlling my movement, making sure I couldn't escape. By afternoon, desperation set in. I shouted for help. My voice echoed uselessly through the forest. Then I heard an engine, far away but real. I ran toward the sound. A ranger's truck on a fire road, Tom Whitaker behind the wheel. He looked surprised to see me. "Thought you were camping up on Hellbender Ridge," he said. I was. I got turned around. Lost. He studied my face, saw something there that made him frown. "Get in," he said quietly. During the drive down, I told him everything. The ash, the burns, the figure made of fire. Tom nodded slowly, didn't seem surprised. "The 3 men who died," he said. "Fire. Trapped them in the bunkhouse. They couldn't get out." He paused, navigated a sharp curve. "Some folks say one of them didn't die clean. Hung on somehow, made of fire now instead of flesh." At the ranger station, I gathered my belongings. Thanked Tom for the rescue. "You might want to check yourself regular like," he said as I left. "Sometimes the burned one leaves marks on folks who've seen him." I drove home to Richmond, tried to forget the mountains, the burning man, the impossible heat. But signs followed me home. Small scorch marks appeared on my clothes. Perfect fingerprints burned into fabric. My apartment smelled of wood smoke, especially at night. The odor came from nowhere. Outside my bedroom window I found them. Burned footprints in the courtyard grass, leading from the street to my building. In my darkroom, photos developed strangely. Images of flames appeared in pictures I'd never taken. Shadows of burning men in empty landscapes. My neighbors began commenting. "Smells like you've been camping," they'd say. But I couldn't smell the smoke myself. Sleep became difficult. Dreams of fire every night. The burning man walking through forests, searching. Some mornings I wake to ash on my windowsill. Gray powder that shouldn't exist. It smells of burning wood and something else. Something that might once have been human. I've stopped hiking the mountains. Haven't touched my camera in weeks. But I know he's still there. On Hellbender Ridge. Where the lightning struck. Where 3 men burned alive. Waiting for me to return. Patient as stone. Hot as flame. The burned man remembers. And he isn't finished. Not with me. Not yet. My name is Marcus, and I've been hiking for 8 years now. What started as a casual hobby back in college quickly turned into a lifelong passion, one I've never been able to shake. This time, my younger brother Jake came with me. He's newer to the trails, but eager to learn, eager to experience the solitude of the mountains. For this trip, we chose Bone Creek Trail, a remote section tucked away in eastern Kentucky. Very few people know about it, and that's exactly how we like it. Off the grid, away from crowds, deep in untouched forest. The trail itself splits off from the main Appalachian route, following an old logging road that gradually disappears into virgin forest, where the canopy is thick and the undergrowth wild. Before setting out, we stopped at a general store in the small town of Millbrook to ask about trail conditions. The clerk was an elderly woman with weathered hands and sharp, knowing eyes. "Bone Creek Trail?" she asked slowly, looking up from her counter. "Nobody goes up there much anymore." We purchased our supplies and asked why people avoided it. "Just strange things happen," she said in a lowered voice. "Folks get turned around. They come back. Different." She wouldn't elaborate, and after an awkward pause, we thanked her and left. When we reached the trailhead, we found it badly overgrown, barely marked, with no clear sign of maintenance. We parked at the end of a rutted dirt road, shouldered our packs, and began our hike. The first mile was easy enough, a well-defined path where morning sunlight filtered through towering oaks and birds sang from hidden perches. It felt peaceful, untouched. But then we noticed the first unsettling sign, a series of boot prints left in soft mud beside the creek. Something was wrong about them. They were too long, too wide, as if someone had worn boots 3 sizes too large. Jake knelt beside them, studying the impressions. "Weird tread pattern," he muttered. "Never seen anything like it." We continued onward as the trail grew steeper and more isolated. Before long, strange objects began to appear, sticks woven into crude shapes, hanging from branches like primitive dream catchers, though darker and far more ominous. Some had small animal bones threaded through them, bleached white by weather and time. "Probably just local kids," Jake suggested, though there was an uneasy edge to his voice. By afternoon, we reached a small clearing beside Bone Creek, a perfect campsite with cold, clear water running nearby. We set up our tents and prepared dinner, but something felt off. The forest around us was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no insects, just the steady sound of running water. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. We built a small fire and sat close to its warmth, comforted by the glow. That was when we heard it, a faint rustling in the trees, movement without wind. Something large was out there, moving deliberately, as if trying not to be heard. For over an hour, we listened as the sounds circled our camp, always keeping a perfect distance, close enough to unnerve us, but never near enough to see. Jake threw more wood on the fire, the flames leaping higher and pushing back the encroaching darkness. "Probably just a bear," he said, though we both knew better. Bears don't move like that. They don't pace a camp like a predator stalking prey. We turned in early, zipped our tents shut, and lay listening to the oppressive silence. Around midnight, I heard it, a voice, calling from deep in the forest. "Marcus," it called softly. "Come here, you need to see this." It was Jake's voice, but when I glanced over, Jake was still in his tent, breathing steadily, fast asleep. The voice called again. "Marcus, help me." It sounded exactly like my brother, same tone, same inflection, as if he were standing out there alone in the darkness. I lay frozen, heart pounding, as the voice gradually faded, moving deeper into the trees. "Marcus, please." Then came silence, complete, suffocating. The forest seemed to hold its breath. I didn't sleep at all for the rest of the night. Morning offered no relief from the tension that had settled over us. When we checked our gear, we discovered that our water bottles were completely drained, bone dry, though we had filled them to the brim the night before. Not even a trace of condensation remained inside. Jake began inspecting his equipment more thoroughly. That's when he realized his compass was missing, along with his backup batteries. "Someone was in our camp," he said quietly, the words hanging heavily between us. We searched the surrounding area, and what we found only deepened our unease. Strips of cloth had been tied to branches around the perimeter of our camp, fashioned into crude nooses. Among them hung bootlaces. Our spare laces, knotted together like a hangman's rope, swaying slightly in the morning air. More boot prints had appeared overnight. The same oversized tracks encircled our tents, pressed deeply into the earth as if whatever had left them had stood there for hours, watching. At that point, we decided it was best to break camp early and head back toward the main trail. But as we began hiking, it quickly became apparent that the path had changed. Markers we had passed the day before were gone, replaced by unfamiliar ones that seemed to guide us deeper into the forest instead of leading us out. Jake pulled out his phone to check for a GPS signal, but there was none. Worse still, something was wrong with his phone altogether. The audio files from the night before had been corrupted. When we played them, our voices echoed back distorted, warped, as though passing through some broken filter. Testing, testing, came Jake's voice, but the words were delayed, arriving several seconds late, like an unnatural echo. We pressed on, the trail narrowing and twisting in unfamiliar ways, making it harder and harder to navigate. Then we saw them, pale shapes moving between the trees, too tall, too slender to be human. They moved wrong, unnaturally, fast and disturbingly quiet, slipping from trunk to trunk like shadows with substance. One figure appeared on a ridge above us, wrapped head to toe in burlap. It stood perfectly still, watching us. The moment we locked eyes on it, the figure vanished, as if it had never been there. But the sensation of being watched remained, stronger than ever, pressing against us from all sides. By noon, we began hearing footsteps. Heavy boots crunching through dry leaves, pacing around us, keeping perfect rhythm. Yet no source was visible. The sounds seemed to emerge from the empty forest itself. Step, step, step. The cadence remained steady, always just out of sight. Jake, desperate to break the growing tension, pulled out his portable speaker and tried to play music to calm us. But instead of music, the speaker emitted our own voices, distorted recordings of conversations from the previous day. "Something's following us," came a version of my voice, words I had never spoken. "We need to run," echoed Jake's voice, equally fabricated. Startled and unnerved, we threw the speaker away and picked up our pace, hiking faster in the hope of escaping whatever presence surrounded us. The trail, however, led us toward an unexpected obstacle, a deep ravine with steep, jagged walls and no visible way across. It wasn't marked on any map we carried, and neither of us remembered encountering anything like it on the way in, yet the path guided us directly toward its edge, as though we were being herded there deliberately. Behind us, the footsteps grew, louder, more urgent. We turned and attempted to backtrack, but the trail had changed once more. There was no way back, only forward toward the ravine. Then the pale figures reappeared, drawing closer this time. Through the gaps between the trees, we could finally see details. The burlap hung loosely over impossibly tall frames that moved. With eerie, inhuman grace, they no longer made any attempt to hide. In fact, it seemed they wanted us to see them now. One of them stepped directly onto the trail, blocking our path. Through the torn burlap, we glimpsed its face, human-like, but grotesquely distorted. The eyes were too large, the mouth stretched, too wide, the skin as pale as bleached bone. It raised one long, spindly hand and pointed toward the ravine. We were left with no choice but to move forward. Reluctantly, with our hearts pounding, we began walking toward the edge. At the edge of the ravine, we stopped and stared into the abyss below. The drop was sheer, the darkness seemingly endless. No bottom was visible, only shadows that swallowed the faint daylight. Behind us, the pale figures advanced slowly, encircling us with silent, deliberate movements. They made no sound, did not speak, but simply stood there watching with those oversized, expressionless eyes. Their presence pressed against us like an invisible weight, suffocating and inescapable. Jake grabbed my arm suddenly and leaned close. "The creek," he whispered urgently. Far below, we could see Bone Creek winding along the ravine wall, a narrow ribbon of water barely visible from where we stood. Along one side ran a slim, jagged ledge, dangerous but passable. Without hesitation, Jake jumped first, landing hard on the ledge below. He rolled to absorb the impact, grimacing but quickly scrambling to his feet. I followed, the rocky drop, jarring my entire body as I hit the shelf. Pain flared through my ankle, sharp and immediate, but there was no time to stop or assess the damage. Above us, the pale watchers peered over the edge, unmoving. Yet none of them followed. It was as though an unseen boundary prevented them from descending further. We pressed on, limping along the precarious ledge beside the creek. Cold water splashed over our boots as we navigated the narrow path. The further we moved from the ridge, the lighter the oppressive weight on our shoulders became. Hours passed as we followed the creek downstream. The ravine gradually widened, the walls softening into a more familiar valley. The haunting presence faded, though it never fully left us. We remained wary, our senses straining with every step. Eventually, we stumbled upon an old service road. Relief washed over us as we flagged down a passing park ranger. His reaction was immediate, his brows knit in surprise. "Bone Creek Trail?" he asked incredulously. "Nobody hikes there anymore." We said nothing more than necessary. Fatigue weighed heavily on us as we rode with him back to the parking lot, where our car sat waiting. The drive home was silent. Neither of us could find the words to explain what had happened, or what we had narrowly escaped. But the strangeness did not stay behind. 3 days later, a package arrived at my apartment with no return address. Inside was a strip of cloth, knotted like a noose and reeking of damp earth and forest decay. Jake's phone began behaving oddly, recording audio files by itself, recordings neither of us had made. When we played them, we heard our own voices, but warped, speaking words we never said. "They're still watching," came my voice on one of the files, a sentence I had never uttered. Outside my apartment, I discovered new boot prints in the courtyard. They were too long, too wide, with that same impossible tread pattern we had seen in the forest. Neighbors began mentioning strange sounds at night, heavy footsteps pacing the perimeter of the building in that same measured rhythm. Moved to a different city and changed my phone number, hoping distance would sever whatever connection remained, but it didn't. The audio files continued to appear, recordings of impossible conversations. Then Jake stopped returning my calls. Concerned, I drove to his apartment, only to find it empty. The landlord said Jake had left abruptly, with no forwarding address. On his kitchen table, I found a single note in his handwriting. It read, "They called me back. Had to go. I don't hike anymore. I avoid the mountains completely now. But deep down, I know they are still out there, on the ridges, hidden within the dark forests, patient and watchful. Some things in these mountains cannot be escaped. They mark you. They follow you home. And eventually, they call you back. Theon." Ridge watchers have no need to hurry. They have all the time in the world. Last night I heard footsteps outside my window again, heavy, deliberate, the same familiar rhythm that has haunted me since that day. And when morning comes, I know what I'll find. Fresh prints on the ground, leading from the street to my door, always pointing back. Back toward the mountains. Back to Bone Creek Trail, where they are waiting still.